Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this very last edition of the Making of a Transformational Leader on Amogate Radio Communications with Tolu Omodara. It's such a joy, a delight, a pleasure, a privilege to have you with us, not just for today, but also for all the preceding weeks. We are extremely excited that you have made it through with us. And to be honest with you, today's topic, today's closing episode, is quite apt and appropriate, not just for the day, but also for the month, for the quarter, and also for the year. So today we're going to be looking at following through with a transformational vision. Let me say that again. Following through with a transformational vision, the place of resilience and building resilience into future transformational leaders. There's a whole lot to unpack there, but let me just give us a bit of context to it. So 2 weeks ago, we started looking at the place of execution, right? How do you lead execution as a transformational leader? We talked about conceptualization, we talked about implementation, and we talked about reinvention broadly some 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, right? We talked about the CRR capacity building framework. That when you're raising transformational leaders, when you're pipelining transformational leaders, when you're curating, CURATING, when you're curating transformational leaders, you want to use a model that we've used a lot in Amogate for our clients, for ourselves. That's the CIL model. You have to build conceptualization skills. Of course, you also have to develop implementation capabilities, and then you have to go beyond that to help them learn how to reinvent. And we spent, required time on the conceptualization, because to be honest with you, sometimes this is where we lack a lot, especially when it comes to leadership skills. What makes you a leader is not necessarily the doing, but is first and foremost the thinking, right? You're a leader, first of all, because you can set the direction, because you can envision, right? And so we spent required time, right, dwelt on the issue of conceptualization. How do you raise your people? How do you create a pipeline of leaders after you who are not just doers, who don't just, receive instructions from you and do exactly as you say? Not that there is not the place of quote unquote obedience, but there is also the need for them to be able to understand the process by which you have gotten to where you have gotten to as a leader. So it's extremely important to, ensure that they learn to envision as well. We dwelt appropriately on that. However, when the time came, we then moved on to the issue of implementation, right? And that's the I. So there's the conceptualization, there's the implementation, and there's the reinvention. So we began to look at the issue of implementation. How exactly do you implement as a transformational leader? Because there is the place of implementation as well, right? You do not just envision. If you are truly a leader, you also have the capacity to implement what you have envisioned. Very, very important. And so we began to look at the issue of implementing what you have conceptualized, right? And when I say implementing here, of course, by now you know that you are not the one doing it alone. If it's a truly transformational vision, you rarely can ever accomplish it on your own. You're leading the implementation, right? And you're leading others, and they should also learn how to lead others eventually. We've been reiterating that on this program from the very beginning, that a transformational leader raises change leaders and builds in them the mentality that they also must be ready to raise other change leaders. So we began to look at the issue of following through with your strategic plan for the implementation of a transformational vision, right? Following through with your strategic plan for the implementation of a transformational vision. And we talked about a very simple 3-part framework to this. We said 1, you create the plan. We said 2, you follow up with the plan. And then you said 3, you follow through with the plan. I'll say that again. We said 1, you create the plan. You create the plan for implementation, right? Not the vision now. We've already established the vision. You've conceptualized the vision. You've articulated the vision. You've put it together. But you now have to create a plan to translate the vision into something that can be, something that will be, not just can be, but something that will be implemented. right? So we talked about creating the plan. And so we followed up by talking about following up with the plan, right? That was the second part of the framework, the following up with the plan. That was what we did last week. And in following up with the plan, we shared a lot about, monitoring and evaluation as the basis for following up, right? We talked about the need to have, ensured that in creating the plan to begin with, you more or less build in the framework, or you build in the structure, so to say, for following up. We shared a lot about some things like the devil being in the details. I'll say that again, the devil being in the details. These are the things we emphasized. We said that when you're conceptualizing, you can have a lot of breadth, right? As a matter of fact, when you're articulating the vision, you're not supposed to go into too much details so that you allow for co-creation. But when it comes to creating the structure for monitoring, it is very important to break it down into details. You need to ensure that you have not just a broad vision for 5 years or 3 years. It's important to now have specific strategic plans that are broken down into annual goals and broken down into quarterly goals. And as a matter of fact, to be honest with you, also broken down into monthly goals. And that serves as the basis of monitoring, right? And that is very important because constant monitoring and evaluation is the engine oil of progress. I'll say that again. Constant monitoring and evaluation is the engine of progress. You are going to need to monitor constantly to ensure that you are implementing consistently. I'll repeat that. You are going to need to monitor constantly to ensure that you are implementing consistently. And the basis or the framework or the structure, so to say, what you're going to use as a basis for monitoring is that detailed operational plan. It may not even be so much of a strategic plan at a level as much of an operational plan. And again, as the overall leader, as the transformational leader, it is not necessarily your responsibility to create every operational plan for every division or every department. It is your responsibility to ensure that it gets done. I'll say that again. It's not necessarily your responsibility to create every operational plan for every division or every department or every unit. It is your responsibility to ensure that these get done. So that becomes the tool, so to say, for following up with the plan. Now, today, as we wrap up, we're talking about following through with the plan. And I'll be honest with you, we're going to dwell a lot on a behavioral competence that I want to describe as resilience. And the reason is that every time I think about following through with the plan, I want to establish the need for building resilience into transformational leaders. And that's why, like I said earlier, today's topic is following through with the transformational vision, a place of resilience and building resilience into future transformational leaders. I have never seen a transformational vision, a genuinely transformational vision that gets implemented without challenges. I have never seen a truly compelling and gargantuan vision that would get done without, honestly, serious challenges. Because it's not been done, or because it's rarely been done, as you attempt it, you are going to face serious challenges. As your leadership team attempts to implement it, they are going to face sufficient challenges. And so I think that it's very important to deliberately, create leadership development opportunities that help your people learn resilience ahead of the need. In other words, you are supposed to ensure that you create platforms, opportunities, projects, right, for them to that will serve as an opportunity for them to practicalize, and imbibe the leadership competence of resilience. What is resilience? Some have defined resilience as the ability to recover from major challenges. Some researchers have described it as the ability to adapt to change. Others have described it as the ability to recover quickly from change or misfortune. whichever way you want to describe resilience, it involves recovery. It involves comeback, right? I once read a book many years ago. I think it was The Power of Positive Living by Norman Vincent Peale. I can't remember how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I think, and I may be wrong, don't quote me in case I'm wrong, if I'm not getting it exactly, but I think the title of one of that chapter was Your Comeback Power. I'll never forget your comeback power. I'll never forget the principles that were taught in that book. And I'll never forget it because the truth is that there will be challenges. And as a matter of fact, what eventually may distinguish you, a transformational leader, what eventually may, qualify you to be called a transformational leader may be this power of resilience. You can create the plan and you can follow up with a plan. But to implement a transformational vision, you need to follow through with the plan. And you are not likely to be able to follow through with the plan if you do not have this critical leadership competence, this critical behavioral competence called resilience. You must have the ability to come back, to recover, the ability to begin again, the ability to adapt, the ability to, be, if I may use the word, to be flexible enough to say, if this method hasn't worked, what else can work? But I'm not giving up on this goal. And I am putting that comeback power, that focus, that determination, that grit. A lady, I think Angela Duckworth, wrote a book. It became a bestseller. She's a University of Pennsylvania professor. She wrote the book titled Grit, Grit. I remember my husband buying the book for me because he knows I'm passionate about that topic. And I read the book and I enjoyed it. You can read it, right? Look, one thing is clear. The research has indicated that what eventually differentiates those who only plan from those who eventually plan and get things done is that ability to pull through, that ability to finish. I think finishing is a strength on its own. That's my personal conclusion. I think finishing, the ability to finish, is a distinguishing trait, if I can put it that way. The Yoruba people of Southwest Nigeria, where I'm from, have a saying. They say, Ibere Polonishe Eniba Furiti Dokwe Naobala. In other words, beginning is not what qualifies you as a doer. It is the one who perseveres to the end that will be distinguished. Extreme finishing is a strength. And I'm not talking about finishing what does not need to be finished. We've already addressed that in previous episodes. There are times you have to review. That's why we've talked about the need for monitoring and evaluation. There are times we need to assess. There are times we need to ask ourselves, so we need to modify, and so on and so forth. Having done all that, when you conclude that certain things should be continued, then please finish. And that's why I said this particular episode on this more or less last working day of the year, as far as this program is concerned, is very apt. You must raise leaders. You must raise, in the making of a transformational leader, probably in addition to conceptualization. I'm not going to take away that it's very important to build in them the ability to conceptualize. It's very important to build in them the ability to envision. We've talked about all those things, but if they have all of that, they can conceptualize, they can implement, they can execute, but they cannot follow through, you still may not have made a transformational leader. Because a transformational leader is not someone who just begins. A transformational leader is someone who finishes. It's not just somebody who envisions a compelling goal, but somebody who births it, somebody who brings it forth, somebody who follows through, somebody who presses to the very end. This is a non-negotiable skill. This is a non-negotiable competence. Now, how do we want to imbue this skill into our people? How do we want to make sure that, I was talking earlier about, creating platforms, creating opportunities. Number one, when we have, sometimes you can have leadership development programs for them, And in those leadership development programs, if you have those kind of resources, take them honestly through some, if you like, out in the wood exercises. And I mean it, I'm being very honest here. This is where you may need to take them out for physical exercises. Physical exercises, one. Two, you can also take them out on, of course, leadership development retreats where you have leadership development trainers come and teach on the essence of these, share case studies, share research, share all kinds of analysis that shows the difference and gives insights upon insights that demonstrate how further organizations that have built leadership competencies like resilience into their present and future leaders, how much it distinguishes them, because the research is all there. These are things we've read again and again, right? So you can also organize such leadership development sessions for them where you actually show the data that demonstrates the difference between organizations that, have taken the time to consistently make this not just a leadership competence, but honestly, at a point, an organizational competence and institutional competence, right? So when you organize those leadership retreats, in addition to physical outings, physical retreats, physical exercises, you can do that once in 6 months, once in a year, whatever works for you. Have some people organize those kind of exercises in a fun way, of course, in a way that is not too physically stressful, but in a way that teaches the point of resilience. In addition to that, you should also have leadership development retreats, leadership development training sessions, right, where you have leadership development trainers, sharing the data, sharing case studies, and letting your people, especially those you are training, those you are developing as transformational leaders, letting them see what the data says about the difference between organizations that have built resilience as an organizational competence beyond just being a leadership competence, but an organizational wide competence, how much this has made a difference in their ability to implement some transformational visions, some transformational goals, and how much it sets them apart, because this helps to, drive the passion and the commitment, to this competence, this leadership competence that I would want to call the resilience competence, right? The resilience quotient, so to say, right? And like I said, someone like Angela Duckworth has already done a lot of work on this. You can read her book, Grit, and you can read many others. This is an area I personally would still want to go deeper into. How do we build institutional resilience? How do we build leadership resilience, of course, in our current and emerging leaders in the making of a transformational leader, but how also do we make it an organizational wide competence, an institutional competence, because it can be a very, very distinguishing factor. The ability to follow through, the ability to breath things, the ability to push through. In Amogate, we are very, very passionate about this. You would hear almost everybody that has ever worked with us and worked with us, you will hear us, we say we do not just follow up, we follow through. Does it come as a cost? Yes. But does it come with its values? Yes. Does it come with the benefits? Yes. Here we are on the, finishing this program, finishing this episode, because we are resilient, because we follow through, continuing, birthing, not just beginning, but finishing, and finishing well, and finishing strong. This is going to be very, very critical to your ability to follow through with your strategic plan, your ability to follow through with your transformational vision, your ability to follow through with what you are envisioning. And it's going to be important for you to first demonstrate it as a leader, for you to first develop it as a leader, for you to consistently demonstrate it as a leader before you can then talk about transmitting this into others, raising others with these skills and creating programs and platforms through which your next generation of leaders and the pipeline of transformational leaders you're raising would also be able to have organizational competence. Well, we're not going to say too much about this. It's probably going to be a whole stream of it. I've been thinking about it. It may be the whole stream of a new program on its own, but we'll see what happens. And we'll be sharing the program. We'll be beginning next quarter with you shortly. For now, I just want us to really take note of the fact that you cannot follow through with a transformational vision except you are resilient. There's a whole lot that is required. There's a whole lot. Don't forget every other skill we've talked about. Don't forget conceptualization. Don't forget implementation. In implementation, don't forget the need to create a plan that translates your vision into action, your vision into reality. The bridge between your vision and implementation is a plan. So you need a strategic plan, and you also need operational plans with a little bit of more details, especially for monitoring. But on top of all of that, you need the skill, the behavioral competence, and the leadership competence as well, called resilience or grit, G-R-I-T, like Angela Duckworth will say. We need that. We need to build the leadership. We need to learn to measure the leadership quotient, the resilience quotient, beg your pardon, in leaders, and we need to intentionally build it. And there are 3 ways I've proposed. 1, we can build it through physical activities, but not just for the sake of physical activities, fun physical activities, especially for young leaders, and we are deliberately using it to tell them that they need to learn to, adapt that same mentality into their mental activities, intellectual activities, strategic pursuits, and so on and so forth. The same way they think about themselves either on the field or out there, pushing through, continuing to the very end, following through, is the same way they must also, implement this or transmit this or translate this into whatever it is that they have endeavored upon. They must learn to birth it. If they review and they feel they need to discontinue, very well they should. You don't need to continue what is not worth continuing. But if they have done all the evaluations and the assessment and the feedback has been gotten from the relevant stakeholders, and there is a clear agreement that this is what following through on, then they have the responsibility to birth it. They have the responsibility to push through. They have the responsibility to follow through. So 1, we can use physical activities to develop this in them. 2, we can also use leadership retreats, leadership training sessions, very, very important, leadership training sessions, case studies, and so on and so forth, right? Especially, where we bring analyses, where we bring data, and where we do some comparative analyses, especially, and this is what I am proposing, right? Where we bring comparative analysis and we show the distinction or the differentiation between organizations that have built resilience as a leadership competence and as an organizational competence, an institutional competence, an organizational competence. We show the difference between how much such organizations go ahead to birth transformational visions and compare them with organizations which do not or which have not yet sufficiently developed resilience in their leaders, in their present and future leaders, and who have not yet developed resilience as an institutional competence to do that comparative analysis and use the data to indicate what difference it has made in the organization's ability to achieve their goals, right? And of course, we can measure other things like profitability. We can measure other things like sustainability, and many other things, talent, retention. We can measure several other things, but at the minimum, we should measure the implementation of goals and use the resilience factor to determine if it has an implication on the tendency of the organization to achieve its goals. And lastly, we must also learn to, in my opinion, we must learn to codify resilience quotient. How would we codify it? How would we say what are the things we want to see, or what are the things that indicate that we can see the demonstration of resilience quotient? What are those things that tell us that we are seeing resilience quotient here? Or what are the things that tell us that we are not seeing resilience quotient there? If we're to break resilience quotient, what are the specifics that we'll be breaking it down into? And I need to say something here in balance, because as a way of balance, because this is another time, or this is a season when people are also talking about stress and talking about burnout, Resilience does not mean that people are getting burnout. No. People must learn to refresh. People must learn to be renewed. People must learn when they need to take a break. You also must create a culture that allows people understand that rest is valued. Very, very important. As a matter of fact, for you to go to have what it takes to be able to go for the long haul, you actually must learn to be renewed. But having renewed yourself, what next? You continue and you finish. That's the balance. Resilience is not an excuse for breakdown. Resilience is not the reason why you drain your people. That's not what we're saying. You must. It's very, very important that you create an environment, you create a culture where rest is valued, where people know that they will be encouraged to rest, they'll be asked to rest, they'll be asked to refresh. But having renewed and refreshed yourself, you should learn to finish. You should learn to follow through with that transformational vision. You as a leader must model it. And after you have modeled it, it becomes easy for you to compare it in the people you are raising, in the leaders you are raising, and to raise them to also raise others to also learn to demonstrate resilience. After you have renewed yourself, after you have refreshed yourself, you shouldn't be jumping to the next goal. You must learn to follow through on the transformational visions that you have taken time to conceptualize and that you have begun to implement. You must learn to finish, and it is when you have finished that you can then reinvent them. Well, I think it's on this note that we come to the end of this program, the making of a transformational leader for this month and for this quarter. We want to thank you very, very much for doing this with us, for listening, for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your feedback. It has been a great journey. We've thoroughly enjoyed having you with us. My name is Tolu Omadara. This is Get Radio Communications, and this has been the Making of a Transformational Leader. Please feel free to share. Feel free to come back as well to our MixLR page. You will see some of the previous episodes still there. Feel free to subscribe to our MixLR page as well. Feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. Feel free to share us your thoughts, your comments, your feedback. We will soon be sharing the new programs that will be beginning in January. Until then, we want to thank you so much for being with us on this program. We want to thank you for all that you have shared. We want to thank you for all that you have, commented upon, all the feedback. You really, really cannot know how much we appreciate you. You are the reason we do this. We are very, very grateful. And we want to wish you a very, very blessed, a very happy, a very productive 2024, and to begin with, a restful Christmas. Take care of yourselves, take a good break, refresh, press the refresh button, and after that, get ready to press on in 2024. Thank you so much, and look forward to being with you again. I won't say same time next week, but definitely same station,